All right, continuing on the fall of the Egyptian Empire, which is in Mizraim in the scriptures, and I'm gonna read this in Isaiah the 19th chapter. All right, Isaiah 19, and I'll start at verse 3. And the spirit of Egypt shall fail in the midst thereof, and I will destroy the counsel thereof. They shall seek to the idols and to the charmers and to them that have familiar spirits and to the wizards. Right. So when Egypt was on its way out, you had the pharaohs that were looking to rely. Their sole reliance were to the idols, the Egyptian idols, which they were known as Ra, Horus. You had, if I'm not mistaken, name was Set, and various other idols that they actually held in high regard, for prosperity and elevation. But those same idols, which they, like the scripture says in Psalms, that the gods of the nations are nothing but idols, and the Lord made the heavens. Those same idols that they depended on, got them nowhere. As well as the magi's and the witches that actually dwelt in the land of Egypt, because the Lord, through prophecy, as it is written in 2nd Ezra the 9th chapter, everything has a beginning and an end, and the end is manifest. All right, many tekel upharsin in Daniel, where it speaks about how the Lord has numbered the kingdom and finished it. He numbered the Persian and the Medes captivity for a season, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, and also Egypt, because this is prophetic. And you still have these Egyptians, these Kemites that follow this course or the religion of Egyptology, the study of Egypt, following the gods and things of that nature, and they still can't really fathom the fact of Egypt falling. It was such a great empire. Hey, the Lord brought that kingdom down, man. And like I said in the previous part, the reason why Egypt was made great was only due to the Israelites. All right, the prophets, the men of the Lord. All right, you had the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel that lived there. You had the 12 patriarchs that were there, and when they were in the land of Egypt, they were expounding wisdom and virtues amongst the people. Even Joseph, all right, Abraham, and various other men. That's why I read that in Psalms 105, how we were sojourners in the land of Ham. And when we left Egypt, basically all the I would say the good that came with Egypt crumbled. That was we were like the legs on the table. You take the legs out off the table, what's going to happen? The table is going to fall and collapse. So that's what happened with Egypt. All right. It's verse 4. And the Egyptians will I give over into the hand of a cruel Lord, and a fierce king shall rule over them, saith the Lord of hosts. Right. And I'm going to get that on the Bible Hub, where it speaks about the cruel Lord, because when the Egyptians fell, you had kings that were set up to rule over them and oppress them. All right, just like now today, you see the Egyptians, in the land of Sudan, they don't even have their country. They don't actually really even embrace the religion of, or the I just use it for lack of a better term, the religion of Egyptology. They don't follow the same customs that the original Egyptians kept, because every king that came into power, they broke that that empire down, through oppression, working labor, pushing other images on them. Like when the Ptolemaic dynasty came in, they had the image of Serapis Christos. And not only did they force the Jews living in parts of Alexandria and different parts of Egypt to submit unto to the picture or the image of Serapis Christos, they had Egyptians also, other Hamites. All right, even when the Persians and Medes came into power, they pushed psychological programming through imagery, and they forced that upon the Egyptians in the kingdom. All right, so and that's why it's imperative to get into the secular history, man, because you have to know secular history to understand biblical history, because this is all going into biblical things that occurred, and the true nature of what the prophecy is foretelling right here. So this is under it. It says, into the hand of a cruel Lord. The latter history of Egypt presents so many pictures of oppressive government that it is hard to say to which of them the picture thus drawn bears most resemblance. Sargon or Asarhaddon or Psammetichus, who became king of Egypt on the breaking up of the Dodecars, Dodecarchi, that's a hard one, or Nebuchadnezzar or Cambyses has each in turn been identified as presenting the features of cruel Lord. All right, and that's from one commentary. And we know it was a cruel Lord that actually came and conquered the Egyptians. All right, going into the prophecy, and they agreed that it was Asarhaddon, and this all just goes into the fall of Egypt, because it wasn't just one cruel Lord. When one got put on the throne, they oppressed the Egyptians, made them work and oppressed them as they oppressed us, and that's the power of the Lord. Because all the things that fell upon us as a nation, the oppression that we suffered up under the Egyptians had to suffer the same thing. And matter of fact, the cross correlation, it goes into Isaiah 20:4. So shall the king of Assyria lead away the Egyptians prisoners and the Ethiopians captives, young and old, naked and barefoot, even with their buttocks uncovered, to the shame of Egypt. So Egypt, when it fell, they took fell from the Assyrian kingdom that came into prosperity. They took the Egyptians prisoner, man. And that was the decline of Egypt, and Egypt never rose since, man. So you guys that is embracing this Egyptology, that's still pushing this Pan-Africanism, believing that Egypt is gonna one day actually prosper and become strong, like the kingdom it was. Hey, every kingdom has a beginning and an end, man. Like the scripture says, time and chance happened to them all. This kingdom fell and it will never rise again. The next kingdom is gonna rise as the nation of Israel, man. All right, we already suffered under the hand of the Egyptians, and the Lord is jacking them Egyptians up now. They're being oppressed by the Arabs. They lost their identity on the whole. And that cruel Lord is still ruling over them. And the cruel Lord really in these times is talking about the so-called white man, because you had in the 1900s, if I'm not mistaken, the scramble of Africa, where you had the Portuguese, you had the British, you had the Spanish, all of them taking different plots of Africa. And when they got to Africa, what did they do? They hit them up for their assets, their resources, that liquid gold, blood diamonds, all these different resources that dwell in the land of Ham. So verse 5, and the waters shall fail from the sea, and the rivers shall be wasted and dried up, and they shall turn the rivers far away, and the brooks of defense shall be emptied and dried up. The reeds and flax shall wither. Yeah, and this all still goes into the same thing, where the fall of Egypt. And I want to just go into this one little part where it goes into the waters will dry up, because it's really going into Egypt actually suffering a famine, because the Lord was plaguing Egypt. This is under the commentary. I'll just read the pulpit commentary. It says, verse 5, the water shall fail from the sea. By the sea it is generally allowed that the Nile must be meant. The failure might be caused by deficient rains in Abyssinia and equatorial Africa, producing an insufficient inundation. It might be aggravated by the neglect of dikes and canals, which would be the natural consequence of civil disorder. Right, and the Lord was pushing civil disorder amongst the Egyptians. As it is written, the Lord set the Egyptians against the Egyptians. And it's known in history that the Egyptians fought each other. You had upper and lower Egypt going to war amongst each other. So it was all kind of confusion in the midst of Egypt before it fully fell. As it is written, Satan's kingdom divided against itself, how can it thus stand? And we see these things going on today, man. The lack of substance that's being pushed in America, the drying up of these major waterways, the fight for water all throughout the United States, because even years ago, the captain brother Abba and myself, the priest here, Tazar one, we did a lesson, going into how America is basically suffering from head to toe, and that's the Lord plaguing America, which is New Egypt. That's why on the back of the dollar bill, what do they have? They have the pyramid with the cap, and they have the all seeing eye on the top of the pyramid, which represents this is New Egypt, Revelations 11 and 18. So it says the meaning is only that there shall be a great deficiency in the water supply. Such a deficiency has often been the cause of terrible famines in Egypt. Right. So Egypt was known through the Nile region, or the Nile waterway, and through that waterway they received a lot of substance. A lot of good food. It even tells you that in Numbers, if I'm not mistaken, the 11th chapter, how when Israel was leaving Egypt, that was something that they held high in remembrance of all the goods that came from Egypt. This is Numbers 11 and 5. We remember the fish which we did eat in Egypt freely, right? Because you had the waterways, and with water comes a large fish supply. The cucumbers and the melons and the leek and the onions and the garlic. So, Egypt was known to have that in abundance. And when the Lord broke that kingdom down, they didn't even have enough to supply the people. And then the Lord oppressed them through government. He took that kingdom out of power. So, this is all, a foreshadow of what's going to come to America. But I really wanted to highlight that, go into a little bit of secular history to show the true fall of Egypt, man. And this kingdom would never rise. And if I'm not mistaken, it was preferably the 16th dynasty of Egypt. When the 16th dynasty, after that, Egypt basically fell. And, you had the Syrians, you had the Persians and the Medes, then you had the Greeks and even the Romans. And now you have America that's all, stepping all over the country that of Egypt. They invaded all the temples in Egypt. They ransacked the pyramids, took all the gold and the treasures out of Egypt, and Egypt is no longer in power. So that's, I just really wanted to go into that, go into a little bit of, spiritual history, and, that's really it. So I want anybody giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Shema, Shabbat, Shema.